We want to dig a little deeper into one of our top stories tonight, Donald Trump's firing of FBI Director James Comey. It may be the first time Americans have seen a dismissal of this kind, but it's got people talking almost non-stop about one notorious time in recent U.S. history, tape recordings in the Nixon White House. I'm joined by historian Ken Hughes, who has studied and written extensively about those times. He's in Washington, so Ken, you must be having a few flashbacks these last few days.
Yes, I am, Wendy. It's been very reminiscent of some of the more tumultuous times during the Nixon administration. But then again, as one of my colleagues says, the Trump administration seems to be like Nixon speed dating.
I want to get into more comment in a moment, but first of all, the White House is not making any comments as to whether there are actually tapes here. Do presidents since Nixon, do they record conversations?
Well, the short answer is America does not know. As you realize, we have in our smartphones more sophisticated recording devices than any president in the 1960s or 1970s had at his disposal.
Right.
So it's altogether possible that Donald Trump has made these tape recordings.
The Democrats have asked that if they do exist, that they be made public.
Yes.
Who knows what's on them if they actually exist? Is there a possibility that Donald Trump could actually be hurt by these tapes?
I don't think he realized when he posted that tweet this morning that now whatever conversations he has had with or about former FBI Director Comey can be subpoenaed. They now constitute evidence in any investigation of whether President Trump obstructed justice by firing Comey.
So what would you be looking for if you were allowed to poke around on those tapes?
Well, I would subpoena everything that had anything to do with the firing of Comey. It seems from President Trump's comments since the firing that one of the things that was prominent in his mind was the Russia investigation and how unhappy he was with it. He doesn't like the way it seems to detract from his election win in November. It threatens some of his friends, like former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and Roger Stone. And for all we know, the investigation could eventually turn up some secrets that President Trump himself wants to keep. But in any of those circumstances, the president would be obstructing justice if he fired the FBI director to halt or to limit that investigation. So I think he has really created a much bigger problem for himself today than he had even yesterday when he first acknowledged that the Russia investigation was a factor in his decision.
So you're a presidential historian. How historic is this, potentially?
The potential is always great. The actual event, we don't yet know. I know that's an unsatisfactory answer. What's really at stake here, though, is a very fundamental principle of American government. And that principle is that no one is above the law, not even the President of the United States. That principle was jeopardized when Richard Nixon fired Special Prosecutor Archibald Cox during the Saturday Night Massacre in October of 1973. And that principle is at stake today. Early news reports on the firing of Comey said, mistakenly in my opinion, that the president can fire the FBI director for any reason. Well, he can't do it for an illegal reason, such as obstructing justice. So now we really need to have the next FBI director, whoever he or she may be.
Nominated by Donald Trump, of course.
Nominated by Donald Trump, confirmed or rejected by the U.S. Senate. We have to make sure that that person has the independence, the authority to investigate all crimes, even those related to the president and the president's campaign, with complete independence and without any political interference.
I realize it might be hard to make a big call like this, but President Nixon, he was forced to resign after those tapes became public. So people are making comparisons. You've got the possibility of tapes the firing, the allegations of possible criminal activity. How strong a similarity do you see between Watergate and what's going on now?
Well, the introduction of the question of obstruction of justice makes the threat of impeachment much greater. The first article of impeachment against Richard Nixon was for obstruction of justice. He tried to impede the Watergate investigation. The third article of impeachment for President Bill Clinton was also obstruction of justice. He was accused of inducing people to lie to cover up his affair with Monica Lewinsky. So America has a history of taking obstruction of justice very seriously. It's not only a crime in our ordinary criminal law, it's an impeachable offense in our Constitution.
Well, so much to watch here. Ken Hughes, thank you so much. It's fascinating to hear your perspective on this. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me, Wendy.